Good afternoon, everyone. It is October 31st. Happy Halloween. Going to talk about what's going on in Israel. The Israelis have opened up another axis surrounding Gaza Strip. As you can see, kind of the intent here. This one opened up near Jahar Adik right here. They are trying to basically create an encirclement of Gaza City. They have points of entry in the northwest, points of entry in the northeast here, points of entry now to the east. As you can see, once they reach the coastline, which the Israelis will do, they have the firepower to do it. They will essentially surround and push inward into Gaza City from all directions to clear out Hamas fighters in Gaza City. That seems to be what the operation, all the conditions that they're setting right now with route clearance, with their artillery fire, with their airstrikes, all seem to be pointing at this essentially envelopment of Gaza City so they can clear it from all directions while essentially destroying Hamas en route, clearing its tunnel constructs, etc. And this is why there was a big push by the Israelis to have the civilians that are not fighters move outwards and southwards via these two roads and get out of the city, because this is going to become quite the battlefield here in the near future. According to Israeli defense officials, at least two armored and infantry divisions consisting of over 20,000 Israeli troops and hundreds of tanks and armored vehicles have entered northern Gaza Strip since they've expanded their ground operations a few days ago. So significant, but still not even remotely close to the combat power Israel can bring to bear on this region. So zooming in on one specific event I want to talk about, Israel conducted a series of pretty powerful airstrikes on Jabalia right here. Now, the residents in this area are claiming that several minutes after the Israeli airstrike, the ground beneath them collapsed, leading to massive amounts of casualties. Many people fell into sinkholes along with structures of buildings, etc., collapsing, largely due to the tunnel complex that was developed by Hamas in this region. Now, these tunnels are going to be a death trap for Hamas. Bunker busters and building collapses combined with the fuel and ammo that they're storing in these regions is going to become a significant point of destruction for Hamas, and essentially is going to create, unfortunately, mass graves in the region. Now, moving up to the Lebanese border, where Hezbollah is conducting operations against Israel. This is Iranian-backed militias that are funded through Hezbollah. The Suraya al-Quds, who is the militant arm of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, is also operating up here. And they have conducted a series of 10 different attacks into Israeli territory over the last 24 hours. Israel returned fire with airstrikes and artillery fire, and essentially destroyed many of the Hezbollah outposts that were operating in this region. Additionally, out of Syria, the Syrian Arab army fired 2 rockets into the Golan Heights at Israeli targets. These rockets reportedly landed in an open field, so really didn't do anything. But the Israeli Defense Forces launched airstrikes back into Syria and hit these different Syrian Arab army groups that were firing the rockets. Now, moving to the region and really the grander global geostrategic aims of Iran, Hamas, Israel, the Iranian Parliament National Security and Foreign Policy Committee chairman is meeting with various Russian diplomats in Moscow, members of the State Duma, the International Affairs Committees, as well as some of the foreign affairs offices out of the Kremlin. Basically, the Iranians are urging the Russians to collaborate with Iran on stopping these quote-unquote Israeli crimes against Palestinians. They're leveraging actually the support Iran provided to Russia when it came to Ukraine. So somewhat of those chickens coming home to roost scenario for Russia when it comes to what to do in Israel. Iran's deputy foreign affairs minister also visited Moscow from October 26th to 27th, where he engaged with senior Hamas and Russian officials in a joint meeting in Moscow. So these are significant developments in cooperation between Iran and Russia. In addition, Major General Yahya Rahim Safavi, who is the supreme leader of military affairs for Iran, as well as a former Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps commander, is in Belarus meeting with the defense minister of Belarus in order to discuss the ongoing conflict in Israel. There was no specific details, but there is a discussion of potential cooperation that took place. Now, looking at the broader Middle East, Saudi Arabian armed forces and air defense sites across the country have reportedly been placed into heightened states of readiness following significant clashes in a number of launches from Houthi fighters over the last 24 hours coming out of Yemen. Now, these Houthi fighters operate right in here. Obviously, this is Yemen right in here, but this right here is where roughly the Houthi fighters are conducting operations. Now, within the last 24 hours, these clashes have killed at least 4 Saudi soldiers. This is likely going to undermine the deal brokered between Iran and Saudi Arabia, as China has no leverage to influence the outcomes in this region right now. Additionally, a missile fired by the Houthis landed in Jordan after traversing Saudi Arabia. So this missile flew over Saudi territory and crashed into a field in Jordan. Jordan is investigating the matter, but has requested more U.S.-made air defenses due to a ballistic missile concern. Jordan does not host American bases, but the U.S. does have a presence in the country to train Jordanian forces and provide upgrades and maintenance to equipment there. In January of 2021, the country signed a defense cooperation agreement, which gives the U.S. unimpeded access to certain Jordanian facilities. What many don't understand is the U.S. does have influence in the region. The region's influence includes Egypt, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan, a fact that apparently was lost on Hamas when one of its leaders recently told the Financial Times they did not expect such a powerful response to what Hamas did. Not only did the U.S. keep other countries from joining due to the presence of 2 carrier strike groups, specific countries include Iran, but also using its influence to bring Jordan, Saudi, Kuwait, and Egypt closer in countering Iranian influence, while also keeping China and Russia on the bench in the region. I said it months ago when this whole Iran-Iraq agreement that, quote, China brokered was kind of a farce. When shit hits the fan, China will be sidelined and has been sidelined in the region. And here's what I said back in March. This hitches China's wagon to what could become a greater potential problem. The U.S., with its far greater military arm to reach out into the Middle East and affect change, and its larger economic might in the region at the time, struggled. The U.S. struggled there. And now, because China is essentially hitching its wagon to this Iran, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Saudi situation by saying they brokered deals, they now have a vested interest in ensuring this takes place, because any kind of breakdown between Saudi and Iran is going to make China look like their deal wasn't as strong or as solid as initially, foreclosed by all of the countries. So basically, China is somewhat taking ownership of this Iran, Saudi, Syria problem with Yemen, etc. And I'm not sure they're prepared to deal with that in a regional influence type of way. So this could all blow up in China's face as well. Again, I don't want it to. I don't want the Saudis and the Iranians to be fighting wars. I don't want Israel getting drug into or starting wars with Iran with the aid of Saudi intelligence, as they've done in the past. But now China is here saying, we fixed it. Now, in some very sad news, Israeli Defense Forces were conducting operations in northern Gaza Strip and have discovered the skull of the woman you see here, 23-year-old Shani Luke. Israeli Defense Forces officials state that they believe she was beheaded, with her body being paraded through the streets of Gaza. We saw images of it as she was in the back of a truck, completely topless, only having underwear on her body, potentially a bullet hole in the back of her head. In that same video, which I'm not going to show, but you can see it on Twitter, just look up skull, you'll find her video, or look up her name, you'll see Palestinians spitting on her body in the back of the truck. Now, the skull fragments from the discovery were submitted to a DNA test, which matched her DNA profile. And unfortunately, Shauna's family was notified over the last few days. They live in Germany, thankfully before this news got out, but just wanted to share that with you. Because once again, we see these Palestinian militants destroying something beautiful.